I'm Cameron, and I grew up in the shadow of a star. That star was my older sister, Lily. Our house was always filled with people, aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. They'd pour into our backyard like ants to a picnic, drawn by the promise of my mom's famous barbecue and the chance to see Lily perform. Our backyard was like a stage, with its neatly trimmed lawn and the big oak tree that provided the perfect backdrop. Dad would fire up the grill, the smell of charcoal and sizzling meat filling the air, while Mom bustled around, making sure everyone had a drink in hand. "Lily, sweetie," Aunt Marge would call out, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Why don't you give us a little song?" And just like that, all eyes would turn to my sister. Lily would hop onto a chair, her golden curls bouncing, a mischievous glint in her eye. She'd clear her throat dramatically, and then, magic. "My heart will go on and on," she'd warble, doing her best Celine Dion impression. The adults would go wild, clapping and cheering like they were at a real concert. Mom and Dad would beam with pride, Dad often wiping a tear from his eye. Meanwhile, I'd be off to the side, trying to blend in with the bushes. It's not that I didn't want to join in, but every time I opened my mouth to sing, it sounded like a cat being strangled. And poetry? Forget about it. The words would tangle on my tongue, leaving me red-faced and stammering. I've heard my relatives whisper that I'm so unlike my sister. It wasn't just the relatives. Mom and Dad made it clear who the star of the family was. While Lily got shuttled from dance classes to singing lessons to art workshops, I was left to my own devices. Not that I minded much. I found solace in the dusty old books that lined our shelves. The only person who seemed to get me was Great Aunt Maggie. She'd find me hiding behind the garage or up in the treehouse, nose buried in a book. "What adventure are you on today, Cameron?" she'd ask, settling down beside me. I'd look up, grateful for the interruption. "Oh, just reading about ancient Egypt," I'd say, showing her the cover of my latest find. Maggie would nod, her eyes twinkling. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, girl. Don't let anyone tell you different." Those moments with Maggie were like a balm to my soul. She didn't expect me to perform or be anyone other than who I was. With her, I could just be Cameron, the quiet, bookish girl who preferred the company of paper and ink to the chaos of family gatherings. But as much as I cherished those moments, they couldn't erase the sting of being the forgotten child. Every time Lily mastered a new song or won another award, my parents would shower her with praise and gifts. New clothes, the latest gadgets, you name it, Lily got it. And me? I got hand-me-downs and sighs of exasperation. School became my sanctuary. While I wasn't exactly Miss Popularity, I found my groove in the classroom. I wasn't content to just sit there and let the lessons wash over me. No, I was determined to understand every single thing the teachers said. "Mrs. Thompson," I'd say after class, my voice quiet but steady, "could you explain that bit about mitosis again?" I didn't quite get it. She'd smile, obviously pleased by my interest. "Of course, Cameron. Why don't we go over it together?" If a teacher couldn't spare the time, I'd ask for book recommendations. Soon, my backpack was always bulging with extra reading material. I'd stay up late, poring over those books, determined to master every subject. All that hard work paid off. By the time I hit high school, I was top of my class. For once in my life, I was the best at something. I even made a few friends, other bookworms, who didn't mind my quiet ways. As graduation approached, our house became Lily Central. Mom was constantly helping her put together her portfolio for the advertising and PR program at some fancy college. "Oh, honey, this campaign idea is perfect," Mom would gush, looking at Lily's work. "You're so talented." I'd roll my eyes and retreat to my room, burying myself in my studies. But one night, during yet another family dinner devoted to Lily's college plans, something in me snapped. "I'm going to college too," I blurted out. "I want to study management." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to my shock and hurt, they all burst out laughing. Oh, sweetie, Mom said, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. We don't have money for that. You'll need to get a job after graduation. You're just not as gifted as your sister. I felt like I'd been slapped. But I'm the top student in my class, I stammered, my face burning with anger and embarrassment. I get straight A's. I stormed up to my room and came back with my report card, slamming it on the table. They all leaned in to look, their eyes widening in surprise. Well, I'll be damned, Dad muttered, scratching his head. When did this happen? It's been happening for years, I spat. Not that any of you ever noticed. Mom at least had the decency to look ashamed. Cameron, we had no idea. But Dad cut her off. Look, it doesn't change anything. We've spent all our savings on Lily's education. There's nothing left for you, Cameron. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. You'll go to work at my cousin Frank's restaurant after graduation. I turned and ran, ignoring their calls. I sprinted up the stairs, into my room, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. As I collapsed onto my bed, sobs racking my body, I felt something inside me harden. Fine, I thought, my hands clenching into fists. If they won't help me, I'll find another way. I'll show them all what Cameron can do. The next few months were a blur. Lily headed off to college, her departure marked by tearful goodbyes and proud parental embraces. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my studies with renewed vigor, determined to graduate at the top of my class. During this time, I found myself spending more and more time with Great Aunt Maggie. Her small, cozy house became my refuge from the tension at home. One afternoon, as we sat in her sunlit kitchen sipping tea, she asked the question I'd been dreading. So, Cameron, she said, her kind eyes fixed on me, what are your plans after graduation? I stared into my teacup, fighting back tears. I don't know, Aunt Maggie. Mom and Dad won't help me with college. They say there's no money left after paying for Lily's education. Maggie was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Cameron, dear, I've got some savings, I'd like to give them to you. For college. You're smart as a whip, and I'll be damned if I let that brain of yours go to waste. The reality of her words hit me like a tidal wave. I burst into tears, overwhelmed by her generosity and the sudden realization that my dreams weren't dead after all. Thank you, I sobbed, throwing my arms around her. Thank you so much, Aunt Maggie. The months flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie beaming at me. My parents were there too, looking proud but uncomfortable. That evening, as I pored over college brochures, Mom walked in. Cameron, honey, she said, her voice syrupy sweet, your father's cousin Frank called. He's got a waitressing job for you at his restaurant. Isn't that exciting? I took a deep breath. Actually, Mom, I won't be needing that job. I'm going to college. Dad appeared in the doorway, frowning. And how exactly do you plan to pay for that? Aunt Maggie is helping me, I said, my chin held high. She's giving me her savings for tuition. The shocked silence that followed was almost comical. Then, to my disbelief, Dad's face turned red with anger. Absolutely not, he bellowed. If Maggie's got money to spare, it should go to Lily. She needs a car for her job in advertising after she graduates next year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I spat. This is my chance to get an education, to make something of myself. Don't be selfish, Cameron, Mom chimed in. Your sister needs that money more than you do. No, I said, my voice shaking but firm. This is my money now, and I'm using it for college. End of discussion. From that moment on, life at home became unbearable. My parents either ignored me completely or snapped at me over the smallest things. The tension was suffocating. After a particularly nasty argument, I called Aunt Maggie in tears and told her everything. Pack your bags, sweetheart, she said without hesitation. You're moving in with me. The next day, I stuffed everything I owned into a cab and drove away, watching my childhood home shrink in the rearview mirror. As I pulled up to Aunt Maggie's house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The summer flew by in a whirlwind of preparation, and before I knew it, I was stepping onto the campus of State University. Thanks to my stellar grades and Aunt Maggie's generosity, I'd gotten into the management program I'd always dreamed of. My first day of classes, I felt like I was floating on air. As I sat in my introduction to business lecture, drinking in every word, I couldn't help but think, I made it. I'm really here. Meanwhile, Lily was starting her senior year at her fancy college. I hadn't heard much from her or my parents since I'd moved out, but I tried not to let it bother me. I was too busy reveling in my newfound freedom and the excitement of college life. But then, about a month into the semester, Aunt Maggie called me. "Cameron, dear," she said, her voice hesitant, "I think you should sit down for this." My heart raced as she filled me in on the family drama I'd missed. Apparently, Lily had shown up at home out of the blue, announcing she'd dropped out of college. The reason? She was pregnant. According to Aunt Maggie, Lily had been flippant about the whole thing. "Oh, don't worry," she'd said, tossing her hair. "The baby's father is loaded. We'll be getting married soon." But the story didn't end there. It turned out Lily's boyfriend wasn't as committed as she'd thought. When he found out she'd been sleeping with his friend too, all hell broke loose. "Now they don't even know who the father is," Aunt Maggie sighed. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process it all. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, the golden child had fallen from her pedestal. But mostly, I just felt sad for Lily and the mess she'd gotten herself into. The saga continued over the next few months. Aunt Maggie kept me updated on all the gossip from the family gatherings I no longer attended. When Lily's baby was born, a DNA test confirmed her boyfriend was indeed the father. But instead of the fairy tale wedding Lily had envisioned, he simply agreed to pay child support. The final blow came when Lily, desperate for work, took a job as a waitress at Uncle Frank's restaurant, the very job my parents had tried to foist on me. As I hung up the phone, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. There was a small, petty part of me that wanted to gloat, to rub my success in my family's faces. But mostly, I just felt a profound sense of gratitude for where I was and how far I'd come. For years flew by in a blur of lectures, exams, and late-night study sessions. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, my hard-earned management degree clutched tightly in my hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie beaming at me, tears of pride in her eyes. Thanks to my top grades and glowing recommendations from my professors, I landed a job as a manager at the Gilded Fork, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. The salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly successful. With my first paycheck, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I marched into the electronics store and bought the latest smartphone for Aunt Maggie. Her face lit up when I presented it to her. "Oh, Cameron," she gasped, turning the sleek device over in her hands. "This is too much." I grinned, already pulling out my own phone. "Not at all. Now, let me show you how to use it." Over the next few weeks, I taught Aunt Maggie the ins and outs of social media. She took to it like a duck to water, especially loving Facebook's video feature. Soon, her page was filled with clips of her garden, her cat, and her infamous apple pie in various stages of creation. I'd watch her videos during my lunch breaks, always making sure to leave a comment or a like. It was our way of staying connected, even when work kept me busy. One day, as I was preparing for the dinner rush, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, surprised to see my mother's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken in years. "Cameron?" Her voice was hesitant. We were hoping you might come over to talk." After a long pause, I agreed. That Sunday, I found myself standing on the porch of my childhood home, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door swung open. "Cameron!" My mother pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you." Inside, I found my father, Lily, and a toddler I assumed was my niece. The atmosphere was tense, but not hostile like I'd feared. "You look good, kiddo," Dad said, his voice gruff but warm. "We hear you're doing well for yourself." I nodded, still wary. "I am. I'm a manager at the Gilded Fork now." Their eyes widened at the name of the restaurant. Mom cleared her throat. That's wonderful, dear. Actually, that's part of why we wanted to talk to you." Over the next hour, they apologized for how they'd treated me, admitting they'd been wrong to dismiss my potential. Then came the real reason for the reunion. "Cameron," Mom said, glancing at Lily, we were wondering if you might be able to help Lily get a job at your restaurant." I looked at my sister, bouncing her daughter on her knee. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'll see what I can do," I said finally. "No promises, but I'll ask." True to my word, I spoke to Mr. Reeves, the restaurant owner, about Lily. To my surprise, he agreed to give her a shot as an administrator. Lily started the following week. I watched her closely, half expecting her to fail or cause drama. But to my shock, she excelled. She was punctual, efficient, and the customers loved her charm. As the weeks passed, I found myself relaxing around her. We weren't best friends by any means, but we developed a cordial working relationship. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, the universe decided to throw me another curveball, this time, a positive one. Mr. Reeves called me into his office one day. My heart raced, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Instead, he grinned at me and said, "Cameron, how would you like to help me expand the business?" Before I knew it, I was overseeing the opening of not one, but 3 new restaurants. My days became a whirlwind of staff meetings, menu tastings, and number crunching. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and everything I'd ever dreamed of. The promotion came with a significant pay bump, and suddenly, I found myself with more money than I knew what to do with. That's when the calls from my parents started. At first, it was just small things. "The roof is leaking," Mom would say, her voice hesitant. "We were wondering if you might be able to help out a little." I was surprised at how good it felt to say yes, to be able to solve their problems with a simple transfer of funds. It started with the roof, then it was a new water heater, and before long, I was funding a complete home renovation. As their financial situation improved, thanks to my monthly allowance, the infamous family parties started up again. But this time, when I attended, things were different. "Have you heard about Cameron's latest project?" Mom would gush to the relatives. "She's opening a new restaurant downtown. We're so proud of her." I'd catch Lily's eye across the room, and she'd give me a small smile. She was doing well too, having been promoted to head administrator at the Gilded Fork. "My girls," Dad would say, an arm around each of us. Both of them making their old man proud. Part of me wanted to be bitter, to remind them of how they'd treated me before. But a larger part reveled in the warmth of their approval, something I'd craved for so long. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Finally, after all these years, I had what I'd always wanted, success in my career and the love and appreciation of my family. I was the golden child now, but better than that, I was my own woman, standing on my own 2 feet. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when my world came crashing down around me. I was scrolling through Facebook, sipping my coffee, when I saw that Aunt Maggie had posted a new video. It was from one of the family gatherings I'd missed due to work commitments. Smiling, I clicked play, expecting to see the usual scenes of laughter and merriment. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. There, in living color, were my parents, their faces flushed with alcohol and self-righteousness. Mom was gesticulating wildly, her voice slurred but unmistakable. And Cameron, that ungrateful little freeloader, she was saying, "She barely gives us anything. We're not made of money, you know." Dad chimed in, his face red. "That's right. We're doing just fine, thanks to our Lily. She's the one keeping that fancy restaurant afloat. Cameron just rides on her coattails." The video continued, with various relatives nodding along, some even adding their own criticisms. Lily sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable but not contradicting them. As the video ended, I sat there, stunned. How could they? After everything I'd done for them, all the money I'd given them, how could they turn around and say such awful, untrue things? With shaking hands, I scrolled down to the comments. There, I saw a stream of messages from my parents. Maggie, delete this video right now. You had no right to post this. Take it down immediately. But Aunt Maggie's response made me burst into tears. I don't know how to delete videos, and even if I did, I wouldn't. It's time everyone saw the truth about how you treat Cameron. She's the one supporting you, and this is how you repay her kindness? Shame on you both. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying the video, reading and rereading the comments. The betrayal cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed Aunt Maggie's number. "Oh, Cameron, dear," she said when she answered, her voice full of sympathy. "I take it you've seen the video?" "Yeah," I croaked, my voice raw from crying. "I can't believe it, Aunt Maggie. How could they?" I could hear the anger in her voice as she replied, "They've always been like this, Cameron. You just haven't been around to see it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but maybe it's for the best. You deserve to know the truth." We talked for hours, Aunt Maggie comforting me as I cycled through shock, anger, and grief. As night fell, I made a decision. "I'm cutting them off," I told Aunt Maggie, my voice firm despite the pain in my heart. "No more money, no more help. They made their bed, now they can lie in it." The days following the video revelation were some of the hardest of my life. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Their words, so cruel and untrue, played on a loop in my mind. Finally, after a week of silence, I sent them a brief, cold text. "I've seen the video. I know what you really think of me. Don't contact me again. The money stops now." Their responses came flooding in immediately. At first, they were apologetic. "Cameron, sweetie, we're so sorry. We didn't mean any of it. Please forgive us." But as the days passed and I maintained my silence, their tune changed. "We're your parents. You owe us." Each message twisted the knife deeper, but I stood firm. I'd given them chance after chance, and they'd thrown it all back in my face. It was time to break the cycle. Lily, surprisingly, stayed out of it. At work, she was the model employee, efficient and professional. If she harbored any resentment over the loss of our parents' financial support, she didn't show it. Our interactions remained cordial but distant. "I'm not taking sides," she told me one day after a staff meeting. "It's between you and them." I nodded, appreciating her neutrality even if part of me wished she'd stand up for me. But I understood. She had her own child to think about now. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself leaning heavily on Aunt Maggie. Our Sunday video calls became the highlight of my week. She'd regale me with stories from her garden or her latest baking adventure, providing a much-needed dose of normalcy in the chaos my life had become. "You're doing the right thing, Cameron," she'd assure me when doubts crept in. "Don't let them manipulate you anymore." To my surprise, other relatives began reaching out too. Cousin Sarah, who'd always been kind to me at family gatherings, sent me a heartfelt email. "I saw the video. I want you to know I think you're amazing, Cameron. What you've achieved, how you've helped everyone, you're an inspiration. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Uncle Bob, Dad's brother, called me out of the blue. "Kid, I've watched you grow up and become this incredible woman. Your parents are fools if they can't see how special you are. You've got family in your corner, remember that." These messages of support were like balm to my wounded heart. I realized that while I might have lost my parents, I'd gained a family who appreciated me for who I truly was. As the year drew to a close, Mr. Reeves called me into his office. I went in nervous, wondering if the family drama had somehow affected my work performance. Instead, he smiled broadly and said, "Cameron, I'm retiring next year. I want you to take over as CEO of the restaurant group." I stood there, shocked into silence. Finally, I managed to stammer out, Are you sure?" He nodded, his eyes twinkling. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You've earned this, Cameron. You're the reason this business has flourished. It's time you took the reins." As I left his office, my head spinning with possibilities, I realized something profound. The little girl who'd been overlooked and underestimated had grown into a woman who'd surpassed everyone's expectations, including her own.